Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm Anna Kasparian, and we have an awesome show ahead for you today. In fact, later in the show, I will be conducting a special interview with a candidate for California's 25th district, Cenk Uygur, who is the CEO of this company, but he will be appearing on that portion of the show as a guest. We're gonna hear about a giant update to his campaign. He has some news to share with you, so we'll be doing that later in the show. Now, with that said, I'd like to welcome my co-host, Cenk Uygur. I get to call you a co-host.
I know. So look, I know it sounds funny at times, guys, but Anna's the executive producer of the show, and we got a great show ahead for you guys. As a host, I can tell you about the wonderful stories that we have. We got news on Pete Buttigieg, Joe Biden. Joe Biden has adjusted, course adjustment.
Yeah.
Is it good enough or not? We'll discuss that.
Some drums.
Yes, and then, well, the Space Force is here thanks to the Democrats. And that's probably the most frustrating story. So let's start with that and maybe get some rage out of the way.
All right. So, the House of Representatives has officially passed the National Defense Authorization Act, and they did so with ease. 377 votes to 48, and many of the no votes actually came from progressives, which is exactly what you can expect. There were some Republicans who voted against it, but this is yet another example, in my opinion, of Democratic weakness because there were a number of concessions from Democrats, and it's unfortunate. So let me give you all the details. First, about 41 Democrats, many of whom are progressives, voted against it, and 6 Republicans voted no. Representative Adam Smith described the process as difficult. He said, quote, "This was not an easy process. We have a divided government. We have a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and Democratic House who do not agree on a lot of issues, and those are the issues that tend to get focused on. But what this conference report reflects, for the most part, is that we do agree on a lot." Now, what do they agree on? Well, obviously increasing the federal budget toward the military. And the House passage of the NDAA comes 2 days after the compromise bill was unveiled following months of negotiations between the Democratic-led House and GOP-led Senate and the White House.
Yeah, so first of all, news stories that refer to this as a compromise bill are just doing propaganda on behalf of the Democratic Party in this case. There's almost no compromise at all here. In fact, on the issue of defense, there's literally zero compromise. Trump got everything he wanted and more. In fact, he bragged about it right afterwards. He wrote, "Wow, all of our priorities have made it into the final NDAA." He said, "I will sign this historic defense legislation immediately." So Trump is over the moon, maybe out of Space Force, saying, "Yeah, I can't believe the Democrats gave me everything in the middle of impeaching me. It's unbelievable." So theoretically, the one thing they got in return was paid family leave, but that has nothing to do with defense and would have passed easily on its own. In fact, Trump, in that same statement, bragged that he is now responsible for paid family leave, and that was his priority.
Cenk, come on, Democrats are. Look, the Democrats who agreed to this, Democratic leadership, which of course agreed to the ridiculous trade deal by Donald Trump, they do not understand political strategy. They don't understand political optics. They don't understand political theater. They don't understand anything. They have been clobbered by the Trump administration over and over again. They keep showing up to play patty cakes with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump slaps them across the face over and over again.
Yeah, well, so the huge caveat to that. So if they're really trying to win, they have a curious way of showing it. But it depends on what you mean by win. Like for you and I, winning might be, wait, don't give Trump everything he wants. And we need a Defense Department, we need it to be strong, but do we really need to add $120 billion on top of what we were spending just a couple of years ago during the Obama administration? And how about any compromise at all on any of our issues? No, but for wins for a lot of the Democratic politicians are, what do you mean? I got all the donor money I wanted.
Exactly.
And so do the Republicans.
They are paid to lose. They're not paid to represent the best interests of the Democratic voters or progressives, right? All they do is go along with what establishment corporate Republicans want, because they're corporate Democrats. They have many of the same donors, especially when it comes to the defense industry.
I mean, look at the quote you read from Adam Smith. So Adam Smith says, we don't get enough credit. We actually agree on a lot of things. You do. Every time the donors want something, you guys all agree with Trump and the Republicans. So he's actually telling the truth about that. The part they're not telling the truth about is when they run elections. And we're gonna do resistance. When Trump asks for something, we're gonna give him $120 billion extra, right? I mean, Jesus Christ. So look, anybody who doesn't cover the core of why these bills get passed and in these outrageous ways is not doing their job as a political analyst, because you're missing the whole story. The whole reason this bill passes in a way that appears inexplicable to everyone else is because of the money, Lebowski. It's the money.
So I want to go to all the different things Democrats pretended to care about but didn't fight for, right? Because remember, Democrats control the House. So if they wanted to hold this military funding bill hostage until they got what they demanded, they could have done that easily, but they refused to do it. So every time, I just want to note, every time establishment Democrats pretend to care about social issues like the transgender community or DACA recipients, just understand that they're being disingenuous about it, okay? So let me tell you what they gave up on. The main stumbling blocks were provisions related to Trump's border wall. The original House bill would have blocked Trump from dipping into Pentagon funds for the wall after he tapped $6.1 billion from the department for his signature project. Ultimately, negotiators, meaning establishment Democrats, decided to leave out wall-related provisions, kicking the issue to the ongoing appropriations process. So we'll see how that plays out. Okay, let me give you more.
But understand that that is not something we won on. The original bill had a provision that blocked spending on the wall. The Democrats, in another concession to Trump, took out that block.
Yes.
And now it's going to be debated later.
Let me give you more. The final bill also dropped a slew of other Democratic priorities that were in the House bill, including language to reverse Trump's transgender military ban, block Trump from taking military action against Iran, and all US support for the Saudi-led war in Yemen, force the cleanup of cancer-linked forever chemicals, block the deployment of the low-yield nuclear warhead, and ban new transfers to the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. They got nothing, nothing. Democrats who control the House didn't even really put up a fight, okay?
100%. In fact, Adam Smith then later went on to say that these are Orwellian, and Ro Khanna literally called it Orwellian. Smith said, this is the most progressive defense bill in the history of the country. Oh, come on, man. I mean, that is alternative facts. That's pulling a Trump to take everything Trump wanted. And how do I know that? Trump right afterwards said, oh my God, I got everything I wanted. It's stunning, right? And calling that the most progressive bill? No, you're the worst. It's totally, utterly unbearable.
So I want to also give credit to the strong progressives who voted no. As I mentioned earlier, Ro Khanna is one of the progressives, a Justice Democrat, who said, no, I'm not going to vote in favor of this. And AOC joined him, which is unsurprising. This is why it's so important to focus on congressional races. We need to get Congress members who are progressive, who are gonna fight, people like Representative Khanna and Ocasio-Cortez. So AOC tweeted, proud to join Representative Ro Khanna in voting no on the NDAA. As Ro says, when President Obama left, the US defense budget was $618 billion a year. It will now be $120 billion more than that. No pundits ask how we pay for it or blast it as free stuff. We just accept it. Pay attention.
Two legends, two Justice Democrats, 100% right. Everyone that hears the story understands that they are right. And if you're if you don't get it, it's all money in politics. You're probably scratching your head, going, why? When you have a historically unpopular president in the middle of being impeached, 70% of people think he did something wrong in Ukraine. 51% of people in every poll taken say that he should be impeached and removed from office. Historically unpopular. And the Republican Party is in shambles. And the Democrats come in and say a total and complete surrender to that pathetic party in shambles that is deeply unpopular. It is absolutely inexplicable except for the goddamn donor money.
Well, let's move on to Joe Biden because he's apparently releasing some plans that are weak sauce. So let's talk about it. Joe Biden has released his plan for immigration reform. And as you can expect, as someone who is centering himself as a moderate Democrat, he is not going as far as, let's say, Bernie Sanders when it comes to reforming immigration. So what does his plan include? According to the New York Times, Biden would roll back Trump administration immigration policies, including its practice of forcing migrant families to wait in dangerous areas of Mexico for the duration of their immigration cases and limiting the number of asylum seekers who can apply for protection at entry points along the border. Now, this isn't a bad thing. This is just the bare minimum. Rolling back what Trump has done is not really something to applaud. It's just something that should be expected. What else would Biden do? Well, Biden would also reinstate the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, which Trump has moved to end. So far, he would reverse everything that Trump has done related to immigration. He also vows to end a slew of Trump's toughest anti-immigrant policies, the public charge rule, making it more difficult for low-income immigrants to enter and settle in the United States. By the way, a federal judge has recently blocked that public charge rule by Trump. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure the Trump administration will appeal that ruling. Biden's travel ban on, Biden would also reverse Trump's travel ban on individuals from 7 countries he deems to be a national security threat, and restrictions on asylum, including the migrant protection protocols under which Trump has sent tens of thousands of migrants back to Mexico to wait for their court hearings in the United States. So again, so far he would just reverse what Trump has done, which is the bare minimum. But he would also, to his credit, increase the number of refugees that the United States would be willing to take in. Biden would set the annual cap on refugees admitted to the United States at 125,000, far more the limit of the 18,000 by the Trump administration. But let's also keep in mind that there have been other candidates who have offered more refugees into the country. So he's not as progressive as, let's say, Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders when it comes to the refugee program, but at least he would increase the number to 125,000. His plan also calls for doubling the number of immigration judges, which is incredibly important, court staff members and interpreters in an effort to address the immigration court backlog. He would also end the use of for-profit detention centers.
So look, there's a lot of things in this plan that are very positive. I really like doubling the immigration judges and other parts of the process because we have a backlog, it's true. Well, the way to work through that backlog is not to ignore the law, but to actually put judges in there to speed up the process. So I like that he's being thoughtful about that. The ending of using for-profit detention centers, wonderful, exactly right. So if he'd come out with this plan first, I would say, hey, kudos, because Biden recognizes they made some mistakes in the Obama administration, and when it's going to be his administration, he's going to do it differently. But here comes the giant but. So as all the news articles explain, he's about to go into campaign in Nevada, California, and other states that have heavy Latino populations.
Right, yeah.
So Joe come lately realizes, oh right, I knew I was forgetting something. I was appealing to white voters and even African American voters in South Carolina, but Latinos, damn it, I guess I got to come up with a plan for Latinos. Now, in one of the debates, he defended Obama's deportation record very aggressively. Now he's turning around and saying, oh, mea culpa. Did Obama deport 3 million people? I didn't know that. So it comes across as significantly disingenuous.
It comes across as disingenuous, not only for the reasons that you outlined, but there was a video featuring Biden responding to an immigration activist that went viral. And I just want to remind you of what that looked like. Take a look.
Over those 8 years, there were 3 million people that were deported and separated from their families. Yeah. We had this classification of families.
Well, you should vote for Trump.
Families.
You should vote for Trump.
No, I'm not going to do that. But I want to make sure that immigrant families and people like Sylvia are not afraid. And you have the power as a candidate to actually commit to stop all deportations from day one through executive action, and we want to hear you say that.
I will not stop all deportations if you commit a crime that's a felony.
So in that video, he just famously said, vote for Trump, vote for Trump. Like if you're not happy with it, vote for Trump, which is incredibly dismissive when this activist, Carlos Rojas, has a legitimate concern about what's happening to migrants right now.
That just happened. That happened, what, about 10 days ago or so? So in 10 days, you went from when he challenged Obama-Biden's record of deporting 3 million people, you went, I don't care, vote for Trump, and you turned your back on him, right? Now, you all of a sudden found Jesus, or maybe Jesus, on your way to Nevada and California, and you were like, oh my God, oh, did I say vote for Trump? No, I meant, I love immigrants and Latino. Oh yeah, I totally, and he talks about how they made a terrible mistake under Obama. You realized in the last week that you made a terrible mistake under Obama deporting all those folks? Come on, nobody believes that. I mean, it's so brazen. This is old school politics, and this is what Joe Biden does all the time. Like he just thinks that time got frozen in the 1970s. In the 1970s, there was no YouTube. There was, every event was not taped. Like when you found a tape of somebody's event, you'd be like, oh my God, listen to what Joe Biden said. I found tape of it. Everything is taped, Joe. We saw you say it just like a week ago. And now you turn around and go, oh my God, I am so concerned about what we did under the Obama administration. I'm changing my whole policy.
Yeah, but in the past,
so transparent.
In the past, this is a direct quote about his time with the Obama administration. He said, quote, I stand with Barack Obama all 8 years, good, bad, and indifferent.
But he also, not only in the debates, but in the video that you saw, specifically on this issue, said we didn't do anything wrong. Turns around about a week later and goes, I can't believe what we did. It's my bad. He said, when they said, would you do anything differently? He said, a lot. And then he said the deportations caused, quote, incredible pain. Well, so what happened? I mean, reporters, you gotta ask them, what happened in the last week? Did you meet a Latino for the first time in your life? Did you meet an immigrant for the first time in your life? What made you change your mind 180 degrees other than going to campaign in Latino heavy states?
Maybe it's because his Latina staffer decided to quit because of his rhetoric on immigration.
100%, and look, you see him changing on this issue. You see Buttigieg changing on fundraisers, etc. Do you see Bernie changing on a single issue? No, because he's been right for the last 40 years, and he's saying the same thing he said in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, etc. Meanwhile, politicians being politicians gonna politic, right?
Right.
So they're like, oh yeah, oh my God, man, oh, did you know what was going on under the Obama-Biden administration? Yeah, the one you brag about, the one that you were part of. But last thing, guys, overall, this is really good news. Why? Because look at how progressives are able to push the entire political spectrum to, I'm gonna say to the left because it is further left, but really towards the middle of the country. Because the polling indicates our positions are incredibly popular on all the issues, and including this one, intensely popular. And we're pushing the Democratic Party begrudgingly against their their true interests into being actually more decent, more humane, and going to the right place. So Biden's still leading in the national polls. So you can't dismiss that. If Biden becomes president, that political progressive pressure made him come up with a policy that is honestly way better than the one he had just a week ago. So in a sense, mission accomplished. But okay, sorry, super last thing. When he said vote for Trump, well, we're not in the general election, Joe. That's the tactic all corporate Democrats using. Hey, look, hey, you gotta vote for me. You don't have a choice because the other guy's even worse. Okay, that's true, but we're not there yet. We're in a primary. So why don't you pick the best Democrat who's been right all along, and then you might have someone who actually wins the election and does the things that you're looking for and means it.
Bernie 2020. All right, we got to take a break, so let's do that. And when we come back, we will discuss a viral hashtag, RefundPete. People want their donations back from his campaign because of some of the disappointing news that's been breaking lately about him. We'll be right back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back in the Young Turks, so many comments here. So I'll do the best I can. Chipmunk PDX in the member section says corporate Democrats are not dumb and don't have bad strategy. They're playing for the same team as the Republicans. These quote unquote bad strategies are on purpose. Persine says, Anna, you just made a fantastic argument why we need aggressive progressive as House Speaker, not Pelosi. They always get what they want when it comes to military spending and conservative social policies. That's right. Nipple Pierce Jenkins Skinny Jeans writes in. Burgundy will read anything in the tweeter. Anyway, Anna is wearing Cenk's shirt. Next will be his jacket, and then bye-bye to his office. Actually, we were kind of talking about that yesterday.
Oh,
about
yeah,
the office
that's true.
Yeah. Okay. James Williams Jr. in YouTube Super Chat says, I'm done. This is too much. If a progressive does not win, I'm not voting for a moderate. Well, look, context matters, okay? I've said this a million times. Yes, when Biden says, what are you gonna do, vote for Trump? When it gets to the general election, that is true. But we're not in the general election. We're in a presidential primary where you have dozens of choices.
Right.
So pick the one that agrees with you and fight for them.
This moment in the election matters more than any moment. Like making sure you have the right Democrat to represent your best interests, someone who isn't bought. Just choose wisely. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, not only one that agrees with you, but has a chance to win. And don't panic and listen to Joe Scarborough on who has the chance to win. Yes, if you listen to mainstream media, they're like, only Biden can win. Oh, also Buttigieg, we love Buttigieg. Okay, but the progressives definitely can't win because no one in our cocktail circuit likes them. So that's not true. Look at the polling. Bernie can win. In fact, he's in a better position than almost any candidate on that. And also, look, if you agree with him, he's got the policies you agree with. And with Biden, if he doesn't have the policies, and Buttigieg, as you're about to see, doesn't have the policies you agree with, hold, maybe they will next week. Okay, and one more thing, guys, in a little bit, I'm gonna, not in this segment, probably in the next one, I'm gonna tell you guys about a super exciting program for you guys. So don't miss that, it's really important. But
also, just a quick announcement about one of our partners. If you are interested in trading in the stock market, one of the best options out there is one of our partners, Doe. Doe actually does commission-free stock trades. Seriously, guys, like some places like $8, $11, but here at Doe, they do commission-free stock trades. So check that out, go to doe.com/TYT. All right.
What do we got, Pete next?
Yes. The hashtag RefundPete has been going viral, and it's in response to new revelations about Pete Buttigieg's time as a consultant with McKinsey. Now, during that time, and this is a story we've been covering since it broke, he had clients that included Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, and he was part of this consulting group that led to Blue Cross Blue Shield increasing premiums and also laying off some of their workers so they can increase their bottom line, their profit. And so now people who actually donated to his campaign are upset and they want a refund for the donation that they gave to him. So amid this scrutiny, some have taken to Twitter to push the RefundPete hashtag to express their disappointment with Buttigieg and ask his campaign to return their donation, encouraging others to do the same. What's incredible is that Buttigieg's campaign is actually complying. They're actually giving people refunds if they demand it. Kristen Hill, who is a volunteer community leader for Elizabeth Warren's campaign, was actually one of the first people to kick off this viral hashtag. And so let me give you an example of one of her tweets. She put out, pro tip, if Pete Buttigieg fooled you into thinking he was a progressive at the beginning of his campaign and you donated what he thinks is pocket change, you can ask for a refund by emailing your receipt to info@peteforamerica.com, hashtag RefundPete. So what's that pocket change thing about? Well, he tried to call out Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders for only taking small dollar donors. And he said, they're gonna try to change the world or change the country with pocket change.
Oh God, that's so demeaning. Okay. Oh my God, that's terrible.
So let me give you the exact details because I want to make sure we're detail oriented with this. In October, Buttigieg criticized his progressive opponents, Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders, for running their campaigns on pocket change by accepting mostly small donations of under $200. Buttigieg has raised 52% of his $500 million campaign.
No, 50.
I'm sorry, $50 million campaign dollars through large contributions and and has so far been outraised by Senator Sanders and Warren. I say, look, that last part's really important because even though they have rejected high dollar donors, right, super PAC money, all of that, they don't go to these big fundraisers, they're still able to outraise Pete Buttigieg. Why? Because they have policies that resonate with the American people. That's what matters most.
Pete, what happened? I thought it was pocket change. How come they've got more money than you? Oh, it turns out if you try to appeal to real people, there are more real people than the big corporate donors and lobbyists that you're talking to that fund more than half of your campaign. So look, the reason I have told people for years now on the Young Turks, ever since we started Just Democrats, to not donate to corporate Democrats is because they have their corporate friends. What do they need you for? So go ask your corporate friends for more money. Go ask the lobbyists for more money. That's the decision you made. That's the road you travel down. So if you're a progressive, save your pocket change, as he calls it. It's not pocket change to you, right? That a lot of folks that give to Bernie Sanders, they say, hey, look, I just got my check and and a lot of people are literally giving their lunch money, et cetera, because they're so desperate for change. Meanwhile, Pete looks at it and goes, your money means nothing to you. Okay, good, then that's why they're doing RefundPete. If it doesn't mean anything to you, I guess they'll take it back.
So while hashtag RefundPete is going viral on social media, people who come across him during campaign events have been calling him Wall Street Pete. Here's a quick example.
Wall Street Pete! Wall Street Pete! Wall Street Pete! Wall Street Pete!
Look, people are paying attention. That's really important. There's a lot to be down about, and as you guys know, I'm down on this show quite a bit because these stories oftentimes are very depressing. But the thing that gives me life, the thing that gives me energy is the fact that right now, voters are paying such close attention to everything, to every word these candidates speak, to every donation these candidates receive. People are aware. I mean, this is the best kind of woke culture, for lack of a better word, because it's about the actual policies, it's about what these candidates bring to the table, and more importantly, it's this hyper aware culture that we're in when it comes to money in politics.
I'll go a little further. I think Pete Buttigieg is the test case for mainstream media versus the internet. So if it was the old days, mainstream media would tell you Pete Buttigieg is a wonderful progressive. He's as strong a fighter for the left as you will find, an American hero, et cetera. It doesn't have to be the old days. That's what they're telling you right now. And for guys like Buttigieg, which is change on the outside, continuity, change on the outside, continuity on the inside. The mainstream press loves that. He's going to protect the status quo, et cetera. So they've almost never written anything critical about him. They've never said anything critical about him on cable news. But it's not the old days. So the internet is now fighting back. So those are real people without gatekeepers going, no, he's taking a lot of Wall Street money. He's Wall Street Pete. He says our money's pocket change. When asked flat out, do you want to get big money out of politics? He said no, okay? And people can't stand that. So it's not just about Buttigieg. It's actually the internet versus mainstream media. Who's stronger? And so we're gonna find out. Because if Pete doesn't get caught, if the mainstream media is as strong as it used to be, they'll just steamroll the internet and they'll tell everybody Pete Buttigieg is a wonderful progressive, et cetera, and then he'll win. Whereas if the internet is stronger, no matter how much the media does a blockade on critique of Pete Buttigieg, no matter how much they overwhelmingly support him, if people find out what Pete Buttigieg is really about, then the internet wins. So this is everything.
Yeah. Well, I want to go to another story involving Pete Buttigieg, and it has to do with examples of the media asking him some tough questions and how he struggles, okay? So this is just a video.
Because he's not used to it.
Right, well, so Pete Buttigieg was recently asked some tough questions on a news show, and I want you to pay close attention to the actual substance or lack of substance in what he says. Take a look.
You have talked about a new generation of leadership, and if you became president, you would be the youngest president in history. And yet you don't have a majority of young voters in this country, according to polls. Is there a way in which you're out of touch with your own generation?
No, but it is certainly the case that often younger candidates tend to attract more support from older voters. But we are building a coalition that's going to draw voters from every part of this country. Now, certainly
you're at 3% and 4% among people under the age of 44 in South Carolina. It's almost as bad as minority voters. What explains that gap?
Look, there's going to be a continued process to earn support across the coalition. But it's certainly the case that many of the younger voters are more attracted to, for example, the Sanders campaign definitely has more young voters. I was a big fan of Bernie Sanders when I was 18 years old. It's also the case that we are pulling together a coalition to talk about issues like climate, to act on issues like climate and guns and the economy, that the longer you're planning to be here, the more you have at stake. And young voters have to mobilize in a way that hasn't happened before if we're going to be able to defeat this president.
Wow, did you catch that? So why aren't younger voters voting for you? Well, I guess because they're naive. When I was a young 18-year-old, I supported Sanders too. But then I grew up and realized it's all about the money. I need the money. So that's why I went to corporate PACs and lobbyists. And if you were an adult, you would realize how much we have to serve the donors instead of these young people who are so naive and go to Sanders. Okay, nice little dig there. I don't think that's gonna work. It's not gonna get you a lot of younger voters by insulting them and insinuating that they're naive for supporting Sanders as you did when you were younger. That's actually when you were, honestly, we read it yesterday, a more decent person and certainly far more honest. And also, speaking of not honest, he said at the beginning of that answer, well, it's a well-known fact that younger candidates get older voters.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. That's totally made up.
He totally made that up.
100% made it up.
Where's the data indicating that older voters immediately gravitate to super young candidates? There's no evidence of that whatsoever. I mean, so he straight up lies about it. Then there's a bunch of him saying things that don't mean anything, there's no substance. And then in the very end, yeah, there's a dig toward Bernie Sanders, right? And remember, the thing that he wrote in his essay, this is when he was a high school senior, he wrote an essay that won an award. He mentioned that the most admirable thing about Bernie Sanders, and the whole essay was about Bernie Sanders, was that he was a man of conviction. He was a man who had deeply held values and beliefs, right? I'm paraphrasing, but this is like the gist of it. And he was unwilling to hide what he believed. He was unwilling to avoid calling himself a socialist. He was true to himself and he was honest with the American people. And Buttigieg said that that was courageous, okay? You know what's not courageous? Pandering to centrists and pandering to corporate donors. And that's exactly what he's been doing.
And part of the reason why that's such a terrible answer is he must have been shocked that a mainstream media outlet actually asked him a tough question, because it might be the first one of the campaign. I'm exaggerating, but not by much. And so he apparently, and he's known for being really smart, and I actually think he is, to be fair to him. But apparently he didn't do his homework on that one, didn't have an answer prepared, because he's not used to mainstream media ever asking him a challenging question. He's like, wait, what's going on? And so he had to scramble with a nonsense, non-fact about older voters loving young candidates. I can't get over how made up that is. Okay, you remember how older voters carried AOC to victory? No, neither do I. Okay, anyway, there's the most important part of this though, guys, don't lose focus on this, is the issues as always.
Yes.
So why do younger voters support Bernie Sanders? Because he's right on the issues, and they get most of their information online. They could look it up. And so they look up all of his issues. When they look up Pete Buttigieg's record, there's not much to look up, and he has changed his positions, and they can see that. If you're, I'm gonna keep it real. Look, we have plenty of older viewers, and I love them, but
who are strong progressives, definitely.
Yeah, wonderful progressives.
Yeah.
But a lot of cable news and the primetime news, their viewers on average are above 65 years old. So now a lot of those folks are online, but generally if you're getting your news from TV, it's pulp. It's just generalities. It clearly has an establishment bias. You don't look things up, and then so you think like, oh, Pete Buttigieg is a progressive. When that's just not the case at all. And so, and then secondly, they look up things and see how consistent Bernie is, how progressive he is, and how he matches the things that they are concerned about: canceling student debt, the affordable housing, And you go down the list, there's a dozen priorities and Bernie's programs match up with theirs and Buttigieg just doesn't. Why? Because Buttigieg didn't build his policies based on younger voters or any voters.
Yeah.
He built his policies to cater to donors. That's why most of his money comes from large donors.
Yeah.
So that's his base of strength and power. But of course he's not gonna own up to that in the media because it doesn't play well.
Look, Bernie offers us a future, right? And that's why young people find him appealing. Buttigieg, in the very beginning, pretended that he was going to push for a better future. And then later decided, no, I'm gonna take the centrist route. I'm going to fight for the status quo. And that's not something that young people are inspired by, sorry.
If you tracked our coverage throughout this campaign, in the beginning, we're like, oh, Buttigieg, interesting. Let's see what he's got, right? Because we didn't know anything about him. For all we know, he was a progressive giant. And then a lot of our viewers emailed me, sent in comments, et cetera, saying, hey, I kind of like Buttigieg. And we started to get some doubts. We read his book and we gave you some of the policies, et cetera. And then our investigative reporting team went to South Bend to find out his track record. And I didn't know what they were gonna get. They didn't know what they were gonna get because they hadn't investigated yet. For all they know, they could have gone and found wonderful things. Well, they found a pretty troubling record, especially when it comes to African Americans. So the jury started coming in and then you guys started emailing us and sending in comments going, nah, I changed my mind. It turns out that guy's not a progressive.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think he's in the middle of getting caught. And the mainstream media just turned on him a little bit, as in ask him fair, challenging questions that they repeatedly asked Sanders and the others, right? Then he's gonna be in a world of hurt because he can't back it up, no matter how much flowery language he uses.
When we come back from the break, Donald Trump decides to go after a teenager because he's jealous that she was on the front page or front cover of a magazine and he wasn't, because he's a child. We'll be back.